here.
He mustn't be here.
Oh, good. Thanks, Desley.
Good morning, members. I will open this meeting of the Planning Committee for today, 3rd of April 2018. Welcome everybody, Mayor Goff, councillors, Independent Māori Statutory Board members. And welcome to members of the public and media. Firstly, I will take a break. Now, I'll just
break already.
Sorry, I'm looking at words that said take a break. I'm thinking, why is that? I've only just started. Apologies. Received from Councillor Cooper on council business. Councillor Bartley for absence. Councillor Fletcher for absence. Councillor Collins for lateness and early departure on council business. Councillor Quacks is on leave of absence. And I will move accordingly. Do I have a second? Councillor Hills, thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thanks, members. I will now go to declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations to be made on any matter of business on the order paper? There being none, go to confirmation of the minutes. I'll move receipt and confirm the minutes of 6th of March. Do I have a second? Councillor Simpson, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Which draws us to petitions, and we have a request which I've accepted for the presentation of a petition from the City Centre Residents Group. David Roos representing the City Centre Residents Group, and that's requesting safer pedestrian access in the Victoria Quarter. And I welcome David, and I think, David, you've got some colleagues and you're welcome to bring them with you, or they can wave from the bleachers. David, come up and take a seat and take us through your presentation and the presentation ultimately of your petition. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is David Roos. I'm representing myself, but also the City Centre Residents Group. This is presenting, as you mentioned, the Safer Pedestrian Facilities for Victoria Quarter petition. We've got about 1,300 signatures at the moment. So the first image there is, if you don't know that is Cook Street up in the middle there, with Wellesley Street and Sales Street on the bottom left, Hobson at the top right. The reason that's there is just to show how many apartment buildings are in there, just to sort of give a bit of a scale for the number of people. So if you don't know what Victoria Quarter is already, the district plan provides the image on the right, and the City Centre Master Plan moved to East-West Stitch describes it as a vibrant urban community with housing, catering for families seeking an inner-city lifestyle, as well as singles, couples, students, mixed use, etc. It's got specific outcomes, meeting the needs of its residents' population, an exemplar of urban living, and it's walkable and accessible. I understand that is a vision statement, and that comes from 2012. So that was 6 years ago. And that's the sort of the basis for the petition. So not quite is my sort of statement on that one. This is the Nelson Street slip lane. This is in front of the Sugar Tree Apartments. There's three of those buildings, two others. There's probably 5,000 or 6,000 people living here. It's not vibrant. It doesn't cater for families. It is not an exemplar of an inner-city lifestyle. It does not meet the needs of its residents, and it's not walkable or accessible. This is Cook Street. This passes right through the middle of the area. It's obviously none of those things. It's a glorified motorway off-ramp. Travels 60, 70 kilometre an hour, 3-4 lanes wide. This is Union Street, heading up to Wellington Street. Again, it is none of those things. This is the main route for children going to school at Freeman's Bay Primary School. If you ever wanted to be a bit disappointed in Auckland, I would suggest looking at that road in the morning, watching children trying to get to school, the same as crossing the top of Nelson Street. This is an example of what the footpaths look like in this vibrant inner city area.
There's a tree in the middle of the footpath.
I've got hundreds of photos like that. And this is the intersection of Sale and Wellesley Street, and I think it's about 4,000 metres wide, approximately, and not designed for people at all. It's designed for cars to travel around the corner as fast as possible, and there's a lot of intersections like that.
400 metres, I think, rather than 4,000.
Approximately, yeah.
That's okay.
So why have I got petition? I think it's fairly clear that there's a problem in the area. There are 50,000 residents in the city centre. Roughly 20,000 of them live inside that city, that cordon I showed on the second slide. I can summarise these slides as basically it sucks, it's dangerous. No one seems to really care. Everyone agrees that there's a problem, but no one's really done anything about it in the last decade. It's been 6 years since that vision statement. The last 3 points are is that city centre residents are good for Auckland, they're good for New Zealand, they're good for the planet. And there's more of them now than people coming in by car in the morning peak. And we need to start basically acting like that. At the moment, it's just a sort of status quo where no one's doing anything, and it's just assumed that we need to maintain the roads in the current widths and the current diameters. And that's the point of the petition, is to say that there's a lot of people and there's a lot of residents who don't agree with that perspective anymore. I'll come back to the actual petition points if we have time. There are 12 together, but I wanted to talk about what is actually planned for the area. So the first one is the Victoria Street Linear Park, which I understand is it's not in the base funding model, and it's in year 3 to 4, so that's not funded. And it's also well away from the actual residential parts, which are all towards the south of the area. The Nelson Hobson streetscape upgrades, which would be lovely, are also in the second extension of funding, and it's the second to last item on the 10-year plan, which means, as far as I'm concerned, it won't happen. The Wellesley Street busway will happen, but the actual amenity upgrade has been separated from the actual busway upgrade, which means that, again, the amenity upgrade is in the extended funding, which means it might not actually happen. So we'll get more buses coming through the area and nothing to show for it in terms of residents' access. I mean, if you live on Sale Street like I do, and will once my apartment is built, there's no way to get from Sale Street to cross the road to get a bus. So having all those buses right on your doorstep is great, except you can't cross the road. The little blue dotted line I've got there is the AT safety improvement, which I've pushed for, and that's basically a pedestrian crossing for Cook Street, which is the only real thing that's going to change, I can tell, in the next decade. So the big red circle is the problem. There's nothing going on there. At the bottom of it there's the crossing towards the primary school. There is no project to do anything about that. It's a disaster for pedestrians. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I suggest you have a look. And the summary of all that is that we have a vision statement saying all those things I put on the first slide, and we have a few projects on the right, but there's no actual strategy to deliver anything to meet the requirements for the area that have been set out. So I'm looking for, and I understand it's complicated, these roads are very difficult to deal with. It's not just Auckland Council, Auckland Transport, it's NZTA. So I'm really here to ask that the Planning Committee considers the needs of the area in line with the document as it exists, and how to work with the other parties. So this, I understand money is always an issue. We've just done the Federal Street upgrade. This took me 10 minutes in paint, basically, to show what Sale Street could be done, just to turn it from a drag strip into somewhere that you can actually cross the street. I don't imagine this would cost millions of dollars. I'll go out and paint it myself if that would make it cheaper.
You wouldn't be the first person to say that.
Yeah. So regardless of funding, I'm just looking for an acknowledgement of the fact that people live here, that it's not good enough, and that the fixes aren't that complicated. There are some really big problems, but there's a million little things like curb ramps and pedestrian crossings and just places for people, just to make it a little bit more tolerable. If you live in apartments, you can't even get to the one park that's nearby because of Cook Street, because of Wellesley Street. So there's 12 specific points on the petition, and I'll leave you to read through them, but I mean, that's the gist of it, really, from my perspective.
Thank you, David. David, you've certainly highlighted the Driveville part of the of the city centre. Have you at this stage, or are you intending to take this to the City Centre Advisory Board?
I wasn't, but having spoken to you, I will approach them specifically with an eye to identifying projects that we can actually implement with that targeted rate.
Okay. Members, I would suggest, and welcome Councillor Mike Lee as the Ward Councillor, to maybe move something along the lines that we refer this to Auckland Transport at least, but there's other divisions within the core council, I think, that needs to see this, as well as the advisory board. Councillor Lee, do you want to just frame something up?
Yeah, I'm aware of the problems down there. That they have been brought to the local board as part of the long-term plan. The area seems absolutely ideal for pedestrianisation. There's a lot of intensive dwellings there. It seems the council has been extremely helpful in getting resource consents for buildings and then kind of walking away, not doing the aftercare. So that's something we need to address, and it's not too great a problem. It should be able to be fixed by an organisation with the resources that we have. So I'm happy to meet with you. I'm already meeting people down there.
Councillor, are you happy with the words? Would you like to move the words that are in the ABC? And then while you're reading that, I'll take questions of David. Councillor Watson.
Thank you for your presentation, David. And obviously, there's any number of big new apartment buildings going up right here as we speak that people will be living in soon. Just in terms of some of these relatively easy fixes like rectifying the footpaths and stopping illegal parking and things like that, has there been any response from anyone within council to those? Because they would seem to be things that could be done and should be getting done as a matter of course.
So this is the first official contact I've had through this with council.
Okay.
So I mean, I've raised these issues, but this is the first push to actually get someone to listen, I guess.
Okay, great. And my impression going up Cook Street is there's not a lot of pedestrian movement from people around there, and I'm assuming it's for all the very good reasons you've mentioned. So what are these people actually doing to go about their business then if they're not walking or cycling?
I think they're walking. They just don't go to places that they can't get to. So I mean, you're not going to see anyone crossing. Well, you see people crossing Cook Street when they shouldn't be, in theory. But if you've walked on those footpaths, it's almost unwalkable for a certain age anyway. I think people just don't bother going to Victoria Park. They don't bother going to Western Park. They don't bother going to those places unless they have to, like the kids going to school who are forced to cross.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Yeah, couple of two or three questions, David, and the answers may be somewhat self-evident. It's pretty clear from what I see that there are some systemic problems that underlie what's going on here. It's also clear that people in the community, such as yourself, have got some solutions, and those solutions could be cost-effective and economical and implementable. Have you given some thought to identify what some of the underlying systemic problems are, and then around the second part, given any thought as to how the community might take more of a leadership role if it was facilitated by the council and Auckland Transport?
I think David's just outlined that, Councillor Walker.
What the systemic problems?
That's what the presentation has highlighted. And if you look at the
I was
petition,
asking Mr. Roos.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not sure whether you read or heard the presentation. Have you got that
I
on?
heard the presentation. I've got it here. I was here for the whole time. I heard a whole list of problems, and my question goes to perhaps what some of the systemic issues that Mr. Roos may have identified underlying those problems, which he didn't cover off, and I'm just asking if he's given some thought to that.
So I wrote a very, very long version of this before I made it a bit more succinct. A lot of the roads going back to the early 1900s were built to a certain width before cars were really a thing. And they were just then paved over and made into have-me lanes you could squeeze in. So Cook Street's a good example of that. Cook Street it wasn't a motorway off-ramp in 1908 or whenever I've got a photo of it, but it was the same width as it is now. So when the roads came in the 50s and 60s, there was space for 5 lanes, so they put 5 lanes in and built it to high spec cornering. A lot of these roads were built in the sort of motorway building era, before anyone lived in the city, or before people left the city, I suppose. And I think the other aspect is the city is still treated as a business and entertainment venue. It's not treated as a residential place. I think you can talk to policing levels on that sort of aspect. The fact that there's four police officers permanently assigned, I think, to the city centre, which is pretty terrifying. Okay. In terms of community stuff, I think engagement is pretty hard. In apartments especially, it's hard to get people to come out. But I think if there's a clear call to action or a hope or a vision of what could be, I think you can definitely get people engaged.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hulse.
Thank you. And that was an excellent presentation. I know the area well because I bike that circuit often, and last year was endeavouring to run that every day, but it was mainly a walk, so I got to see it quite closely. The question is, thinking about the change of use to being more community friendly and more walkable, are you happy to include the concept of bikeable as well, without it becoming a huge motorway for bikes that then, sort of turns off the walkers? I think we need to discuss a sort of a biking, walking, people-orientated approach to some of these huge car sewers that dominate that area. And I'll make it a question, would that be acceptable?
Absolutely. I mean, I cycled here. I cycled to work. There's enough space for everyone on those roads, I'll put it that way. Cycling is my preferred mode to get around the city, just because it's hard to get a bus from one side of the CBD to the other, and walking is just really slow and boring.
And that Sale Street intersection is a very scary one as a cyclist, because you can't really see what's coming, and it's huge. Yep. Thank you. Good word.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, David, thank you for your presentation. I thought it was very interesting, and in some respects a little sad that you have to come to us when we have seen the city centre burgeoning with people and apartment building very quickly, very rapidly. So it's a shame that we're not one step ahead of the ball. My question to you is, have you spoken to the local board? Because I think it's important that you have their support to take this forward. This is their community, and they have a direct relationship with Auckland Transport as well. And although you've come to us with quite a precinct and a larger planning set of suggestions, I think that also it would be handy for them as a shared governance, co-governance with us, to have the same presentation and to gain their support for what you want to try and achieve. I also think that in your discussions with Auckland Transport, I couldn't fault you on the little things. It's sometimes the little things make the most impact, and you're simple, just, if you just painted this or did this. And I think that, sometimes we don't have to crack a nut with a sledgehammer. There are quick, cheaper solutions that would work just as well. So keep pushing those ideas. Not always, Auckland Transport doesn't always come up with those little sensible, quick things. And I don't say that with any disrespect, but it's sometimes it's the view that the sort of the man on the street who does it every day can come up with something quite simple. So keep doing that. So well done. Thank you.
The first question was, have you been to the local board? And my understanding is you have been talking to the chair of the board?
Yes, we have. We presented this, not this exact presentation, but my wife spoke on my behalf. At that one I couldn't make it, but we presented to the local board.
But David, you haven't presented to the City Centre Advisory Board, and that is your intention?
That's really good.
Yeah, we can do that, yeah.
That would be
Good step.
beneficial. That would be a pretty basic step. And in your presentation, you said that this is your first port of call. So can you just tell us what contact have you had with Auckland Transport?
That's the bus route.
So going right back to the start, when I wrote my very long version of this, I provided that to the local board before the petition, and eventually Auckland Transport came to the table on that. So that was a very specific tactical solution for the Cook Street crossing. So we're just getting a crossing for Cook Street.
It was for a part. It was
Yeah,
an
it's, I
el-
mean,
an
it's
element. Okay.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying is we can complain about very specific aspects, but that doesn't solve the underlying fundamental
Okay.
problems. So this was removing a lane potentially from coming up Union Street and providing a crossing on Cook Street.
Okay.
I will be contacting them again to present a petition in the next week or two.
Right. Councillor Lee.
I agree with those recommendations, Mr Chairman, and I think your suggestion of presenting to the City Centre Advisory Board is a good one.
Yep.
I know that the Sugar Tree people have presented to the Waitemata Local Board a couple of weeks ago, but I think that we should get behind this, Mr Chairman, because our main strategy has been centralisation and intensification in this area, which is an island really, between State Highway 1 and the arterials, Nelson, Hobson and so on, could become a model, if you like, of what we are trying to achieve. And that obviously requires much better pedestrian access and crossings, but also basic stuff which is not being done, clearing away rubbish, weeds, tending to the surface of footpaths, which are pretty bad. As I said before, it's one thing to upzone and fast-track resource consents, but we have to do the public service stuff after that to make that place, to enhance the livability. And it could become a model, like a little model island in the middle of the city. So I think it's an interesting project we should all get behind.
Yeah. So, sorry, on that point, it didn't make it into the slide deck, but if Auckland wants to intensify, we need to show people what it could look like. And this is what it looks like at the moment, and I don't think you can convince anyone of that aspect.
Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the question is more to our staff, and it's around 10 and 12. 10, take action to progress the city centre master plan objectives for the area, so I'll be interested to see where we are at in regards to that. And 12, the recently agreed roads and streets framework must be meaningfully implemented. So those are the two ones I think that we as a council will have an input in and the direction of, because I agree with Councillor Watson in regards to a lot of the petition points that are here. Is stuff that can be done as a matter of course, but still knowing the city centre master plan as well as the O2 that came through the framework around the link. So where do we end up with that? I mean, what happens from there? Through you, Chair,
So
to
on 2 points
Mr. Quinn.
on just the progress in the city centre master plan.
10 and 12 are the key ones, I
Patient.
think, from your petition that council has a really big input in regards to. So, I mean, I'll be interested to find out where we're situated with that.
Jim Quinn, Chief of Strategy,
Thank
might
you.
be able to answer.
Thanks. Yeah, so in terms of the city centre master plan, you know, we're committed to that. The way the long-term plan achieves the balance we've got to achieve over the next few months will be a key input to it up in terms of the phasing of it. I think there's a wide range of opportunity. One is what we specifically do. The other is what we encourage as developers continue to develop things, and how we ensure the amenity and the roadscape is fit for residents as much as the city itself. So it's important we're alert to the opportunity as those opportunities come as well, because some of it is as we retrofit, and if you think just even the whole CRL and a lot of the work that will come off that with the Victoria Linear Park, as that rolls, will have some impact. In terms of the roads and streets framework, that's more an AT thing, which I'll follow up with them, but I know they've adopted it, but the specific actions on that I can't respond to.
And Chair, just supplementary, so Mr. Roos, did you end up submitting through the long-term plan, Auckland plan process?
I did, yes.
And was part of your submission, and my apologies, I haven't read it, but was part of your submission around the implementation or the progress on the city centre master plan? Because I've just heard Mr. Quinn mention that there's some long-term plan implications. So as a result of those, something should be coming back to us around the city centre master plan.
Yep.
So
I submitted, my submission included a reference to the petition and the petition signatures itself.
Right.
okay, cool. So Chair, we'll be getting
That's where it should come back.
something back
as
through
well. Yep.
with the joint Finance and Performance and Planning Committee.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Roos.
So, and thanks for raising that, Councillor. So there is a waterfront package of works that are in the draft plan. There's a city centre targeted rate package of works in the draft plan. And I think we just need to explore what our overall priorities are in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Oh, thanks, David. I've got a comment and an invitation to you. Tomorrow my committee meets in Manukau, and the focus is on community safety, and the police will be represented there, as will Auckland Transport, the seniors panel and the disability advisory panel. And the issues you raised today will be raised again there, so it'd be interesting for you, a representative from your organisation to come along. I'll give you the agenda for that. So I'm interested in the bit that hasn't been touched on so far, and that is, you mentioned it briefly, you said there were basically 4 police officers in the city centre, and yet you raised the issues of vehicle speeding and red light running, which we have no responsibility for, but the police do. So you can raise that tomorrow, or you can tell me what you're going to do about that in terms of policing.
So as part of the City Centre Residents Group, we have a police liaison who comes, I think, quarterly at the moment, and we raise these issues endlessly. That's the extent of it.
And
There's still 4 police officers.
Okay, so Councillor Casey is referring to item 8 on the petition. I think that's something that we can take up straight away. So,
you want to add a D?
look, I don't think we need to list everything there. I'll just take it that we will follow up with Auckland Transport. If there's illegal parking, there's speeding and red light running, that's just business that we have to attend to, absolutely have to attend to. So I'll take that one on board. The 8 we will address and we'll take a note of it. We'll follow up today. We'll confirm that in writing with Auckland Transport.
And I will be following up tomorrow with the police at my committee in Manukau, and you're very welcome to attend, David.
I'll see if someone from our group can attend. I won't
Excellent.
be able to.
Okay, there being no further questions, Councillor Lee has moved. I've seconded. David, thank you. Really good input. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you, David.
Cheers.
Mr Chair, just had a text from Councillor Close expressing his apologies for lateness. I'm sorry,
Okay.
just come through.
We'll record that to the earlier motion.